But we have on the line with us, he's on his phone, I'm on mine, Bill Nojay, the assemblyman for many in the listening area, and also the host of a regular Monday through Friday feature here on WLEA. Stay tuned. All right, now, Bill, I want to point out very early on in the show, I never got a card from you, buddy. I got one from Heineman. I never got one from you. What's the story here?
It must be lost in the mail.
Oh, okay. Well, we know how the mail service goes. Listen, Bill, I don't want to talk very much about the hospital because that's a very fluid situation.
Right.
But it seems to me that the best hope we have in this area now is, number one, the doctors have joined together, and they're running ads, and they're out there fighting to keep at least a hospital in Hornell, not just a glorified emergency room. But it seems to me also that the real key to success here is none other than the Democrat mayor of Hornell and the county chairman, Sean Hogan. How do you see it?
Well, it's a complicated situation. What's happening, and we've talked about this before, all of upstate New York is seeing a contraction in its economy, its population. 95% of the school districts in upstate New York are smaller today than they were 20, 30 years ago. And that's really taking a toll on the health care situation. In addition to the population declines and our demographic shifts, we're an aging population in upstate New York, which means we're a more expensive population to take care of. But you had it right. If the mayor, Sean Hogan, the deputy mayor, John Buckley, other members, other aldermen, combine with the community at large, including the healthcare practitioners, and make the case and demand that the State Board of Health or the Department of Health allocate a number of beds to Hornell, then the one person that can actually make that decision with a signature is the governor. It all really falls ultimately upon the governor to decide that there's going to be a hospital in Hornell. Whether or not he's paid much attention so far, I don't know. I'm not on his Christmas card list, but it's very clear that the community must speak loudly, and the listener needs to be the governor.
Well, the doctors have now joined together. They're running ads on our station, maybe elsewhere too, urging people to sign the petitions that are circulating. And they're also demanding, maybe demanding is the wrong word, they're also requesting very strongly that we be left with at least some inpatient beds, with operating rooms, and with OBGY. In other words, a scaled-down version, but at least a hospital, which in Hornell we've enjoyed for 150 years or more. You there?
It's a critical thing for the future of the community.
Oh, yeah.
Wellsville has got beds. Dansville has got beds. Hornell is bigger than either of those places. I think that, it really doesn't make any sense to be pointing fingers and whatnot, but the fact is that Hornell has been let down by the people that have been responsible for its health care for the past several years. They've literally fled town, leaving the community holding the bag.
Catholic Hospital East and Trinity.
Absolutely.
They have really fouled it up big time.
Yeah. I mean, there's no way to sugarcoat it.
No, whether they did it intentionally or not, we don't know, but they certainly have been a great disservice. Okay, now, Bill, let's talk about Albany politics. How big a lead in the Senate will the Republicans have?
Well, it's a slim majority. They've got 32 seats, and they need 32 for the majority. So the good news about November 4th, the good news for upstate New York, is that the New York City Democrats, who dominate the Democrat side of the Senate caucus, are not going to be running the show in the Senate as they do in the Assembly. The bad news is that when you've only got 32 seats and you needed 32 for a majority, that means you are the proverbial one heartbeat away from losing the majority. Now, the Republicans have got a couple of aces up their sleeve. They've got one conservative a Jewish member from New York City who tends to vote with the Republicans, but that's really very, very close. Then you've got these renegade Democrats, the so-called Independent Democrat Conference, that are still interested in having a seat at the table, and apparently the Republicans are going to negotiate a deal with them to make sure that if something does happen to that 30-second vote, that they still have a governable majority. So I think it's a good news for the next couple of years, in the sense that I don't think any great damage is going to be done. Although anybody can guess. We got the SAFE Act when allegedly the Republicans were in charge the last time. So we'll let me put it this way: it could have been worse. It could have been a lot worse for upstate New York. And November 4th worked out probably as well as it could have for the southern tier and upstate generally.
Now, there are people who are Republicans because their father was a Republican, and right on, you know the story. Same with the Democrats. Our family's always voted Democrat, we'll say, So they might wonder why you and indirectly Kevin Doran are saying it's crucial for us upstate to have Republicans in charge of at least one of those houses. So I'll give you a moment to explain that.
Well, it's not Republican-Democrat so much as it is upstate, downstate. Look, I don't think, and I've never been a conspiracy theorist that says that people in New York City wake up in the morning thinking about how to kill off jobs and business and the economy of upstate New York. I don't think they do that. I think they just do what comes natural to them as New York City politicians. And the problem is that just happens. We're like the roadkill, the collateral damage, when these people are put in charge. You look at what happened when the Democrats ran both the Senate and the governor's office and the Assembly for a couple of years there, and it was absolute havoc. They raised taxes by billions of dollars. They came across with all these left-wing policies, and it certainly has not been good. With Andrew Cuomo as governor, he's been shutting down prisons. He's shutting down the workshops for the developmentally disabled. We got the SAFE Act. None of that has been good. No relief from mandates. So the battle in New York State, it is characterized in the news media as Democrat versus Republican. But the real way to characterize it is upstate versus downstate. The New York City Democrat politics has been taken over by radical leftists. Bill de Blasio, the guy who went to Nicaragua in the 1980s to support the communist Sandinistas, got married in 1994 and went on his honeymoon in Havana, Cuba. How many people you know have honeymooned in Cuba?
I don't know anyone, and I can't imagine why anyone would.
Well, and then last year, campaigning for mayor of New York City, Bill de Blasio was asked about his religion, and he said he's been deeply influenced by liberation theology. Mm-hmm. Well, go look that one up. That's Marxism.
That's Marxism condemned by Rome, condemned personally by Pope John Paul II, yeah.
And he is firmly in command of the New York City Democratic Party, because he's not alone. He's got the majority of the New York City Council. He's got the majority of the Albany delegation. Andrew Cuomo is a little bit of an outlier here because he is liberal, but he's not a radical. And so it's a very interesting dynamic on the Democratic side. And whether it's the liberalness of Andrew Cuomo or the radicalness of the rest of the New York City Democrats, none of it is good for upstate New York and specifically the southern tier. So that's why I say I don't care if you are a registered Republican or Democrat or conservative or whatever. If you are here in upstate New York, in the Hornell area, you got to be hoping and praying for our jobs and the future of our kids being able to stay here, that the Republicans control the Senate. And I don't mean that in a partisan way. That's just a fact.
No, I think most people... Listen, it was once said that Mario Cuomo, the present governor's dad, his greatest nightmare was waking up finding out that Democrats control both the Senate and the House. Thus, he would have been on the caboose in that train. Now, let's talk for a moment. Whatever happened to the Assembly? I'm old enough to remember when the Assembly was Republican. What happened that the Democrats took total control of the Assembly, and they did it in such a way that one can never imagine Republicans ever having a real voice there.
No, it's very difficult. Phil Palmisano and Joe Giglio and I, the Hornell area delegation, we do our best to hold them at bay along with the other colleagues we've got from upstate New York, and there are even a couple of conservative Democrats, one from the Buffalo area, who do our best to slow down the stampede towards this left-wing ideology that drives the New York City Democratic caucus. But, you know, that's why I say you've got the Assembly, you've got the Senate, and you've got the governor's office. And you've got a fascinating dynamic right now because you've got all three factions tugging in different directions. And what happens in 2015 in a lot of these hot-button issues like fracking in upstate New York and in the southern tier, or social issues like the Second Amendment and abortion and so on, I think it's all up for grabs. It's going to be an interesting year.
We're going to take a break. When I get back with Bill Nojay, we're going to ask him what trouble Mayor Giuliani got himself into. And I can tell you it was only from speaking the truth, and he got himself into a lot of hot water. We'll take that up after this. This Tuesday edition of the Newsmaker Show, originating as it did yesterday from my bed to the station to the guest. It was your buddy Heineman yesterday, Bill. Now it's you. All right, tell us what Giuliani said and why it caused such a brouhaha.
Well, I didn't actually hear the comments. I've seen transcripts, and I've heard a lot of people talking about it. What Rudy Giuliani said was, let's stop accusing the police for all of these race relations problems, like this thing in Ferguson that is now blowing up again because the grand jury finished its deliberations. What Rudy Giuliani has always done when he was mayor of New York City, and since he's been mayor of New York City, is to defend the cops in the street, the beat cops. They're the ones in the front lines. He's always been a strong defender of their actions, assuming, obviously, that there's no intention to do something criminal. He always gives the benefit of the doubt to the cops. The protesters in Ferguson and in other places around the country not only do not give the benefit of the doubt to the police, but they are the first to accuse the police of racism and bigotry and shooting unarmed black men on purpose and so on. It's language on their part that's meant to inflame. And what Rudy Giuliani said was, hey, and this is what got him in trouble, he said most of the deaths by gun violence in our urban areas is blacks shooting blacks. It's not white police officers shooting blacks. It's black bad guys shooting black citizens. And he wonders why there's not so much anger directed by all these protesters, people wanting to inflame the passions. Why aren't you angry at the black criminals shooting your black brothers on the street? Why do you only direct the anger at the police officers? I think it's a legitimate point that Giuliani makes, but for that reason, people are doing their faked outrage, and I think it's professional wrestling. I think they're putting on a big show to get their faces on the television and their names in the newspaper, and I don't think it's genuine. I don't think it certainly is not meant to improve race relations.
Well, you know, Al Sharpless, he's not stupid. He certainly knows what you just said, and yet I've never heard him say a thing about that. Now, let me ask you this. Have you ever heard of rehearsals for demonstrations? That's what's been going on in Ferguson for the last couple of weeks. They've actually rehearsed their demonstrations.
Yeah. Well, look, what we're finding out is that a lot of these so-called citizen protests in Ferguson are being orchestrated by people that want to see violence. They want to see community disruption. It really is disingenuous, and it is meant to inflame anger. It's just disgusting. It's disgusting conduct, and frankly, these people should be slapped in prison.
Yeah, I think so too. They certainly are stirring up violence.
Yeah, and frankly, I think this is a case where the police and law enforcement are bending way too far backwards to accommodate these people. They are there to incite violence, and the governor should put a stop to it.
Now, let me go to politics. One thing you get to do a lot of when you're handicapped, like I've been recently, and hospitalized, as I was recently, and I can't say it's the best thing you could do with your time, but you watch a lot of television. And I became aware of this almost by accident the other day, that the Democrats don't have anyone but Hillary. Who have they got? If they don't put up Hillary, they've got nobody. Am I wrong about that?
No. There are a lot of people who would like to be standing, starting with our own Governor Andrew Cuomo.
That's not going to happen. They'll never nominate him.
No, nobody doubts that is what he wants. I mean, Andrew Cuomo wants to be standing there as the anti-Hillary. If Hillary falls, her campaign falls flat, there will be Andrew standing in the center mainstream of the Democratic Party, a fiscal moderate. He's punched all the tickets on the liberal side on social policy with gun control and gay marriage and pro-abortion and so on. So I think Andrew Cuomo is clearly positioning for a presidential run if something should happen to Hillary's campaign. Of course, the other person that is being talked about is Elizabeth Warren, the senator from Massachusetts, who clearly wants to be on the left's alternative to Hillary Clinton. And you do have a few others, not household names, not with the kind of money that you would need. But let me ask you this. This is end of 2014, 2 years to go. Who really knew who Barack Obama was?
Well, you got that right.
Before the 2008 election. So
the only one that really knew, and the only one that I think was with him right from the beginning, was George Soros, and that meant a lot. There's a lot of money there.
Yep.
How about the Republican side? May I make a request if you're a delegate? I don't want to see another Bush-Clinton election. I was there for the first one. Where do you stand on Jeb Bush?
Well, I'll tell you, Jeb Bush, my money would be that he does intend to run.
Yeah.
Whether he can get any traction in 2015, 2016 with the Republican primary voters, I don't know. I'll tell you, there's that old saying, as you know, Kevin, we on the show all the time, elections are not referendums, they're choices. And if it's Jeb Bush versus Chris Christie, I'll go with Jeb Bush. If it's pretty much anybody other than Chris Christie, I'll go with the anybody. And yet, Chris Christie is up there. Now, Mitt Romney is an interesting problem because a poll just came out yesterday showing that Mitt Romney is number one in the rankings with the Republican electorate. But does anybody really think that Mitt Romney can beat Hillary Clinton in 2016? I don't know.
Well, the more he gets his name mixed up with Jonathan Gruber, the less chance he has. And there's evidence that Gruber was behind. Not only evidence, it's apparently pretty clear that Gruber, this guy who's a big fraudster and trickster, sham artist on selling Obamacare to the American people under a bunch of false pretenses, that he also designed or was a key person in designing Romney Care in Massachusetts. So that's certainly not going to help Mitt Romney. By the way, how much is it costing the taxpayers for these ads that are on all of the time, talking about how wonderful New York State is for business and how many jobs it's created? I haven't seen any. Maybe they are going on somewhere, but certainly not in our area. Didn't that cost billions of dollars?
Yeah, the
taxpayer money.
There's no. It's costing tens of millions of taxpayer dollars. It's all a public relations campaign to support the governor's election.
Yeah.
I think the reason they're still running is that the governor couldn't stop them the day after the election. That would have been too cynical. Would have been too obvious that it was really all about his campaign. They'll eventually sort of wind down, and you won't hear too much about him anymore. but it was all about the governor's reelection campaign.
That's right. Bill Nojay, thank you for being with us.
It's always a pleasure, Kevin.
Now stay tuned for more news and information on AM 1480. Don't forget, part of that information flow comes right from Bill Nojay every day following the 3 o'clock news.